Iranian nuclear scientists secretly visited Russia last year to obtain nuclear technology for developing nuclear weapons. This shocking information was reported by the Financial Times, whose journalists conducted an investigation proving that Russia transferred technologies to Iran that could turn Iran into a nuclear power. Therefore, the strike on Iran's nuclear facilities in June was more than justified. I'm Alexei Peachy. Let's investigate this together. But before we start, I ask you to subscribe to this channel, like the video, leave any comment, and be sure to subscribe to my Telegram channel, Peachy News. The link to it is in the description of this video. So, the Financial Times writes that on August 4th of last year, an Iranian delegation arrived in Moscow, which included Ali Kalvand, a 43-year-old Iranian nuclear scientist, accompanied by 4 employees of what was supposedly a diplomatic structure of Iran. But this was merely a cover story. The Iranians arrived in Russia using diplomatic service passports, some of which were numbered sequentially and issued on the same day just a few weeks before this trip. In fact, one of the members of the delegation was an Iranian nuclear scientist who, according to Western officials, works at Iran's Organization of Defensive Innovation and Research. This secret military research unit has been called by the United States government, quote, the direct successor to Iran's nuclear weapons program. The second so-called diplomat was the former head of a company sanctioned by the United States for providing procurement services for Iran's nuclear program. The final member of the group was an Iranian military counterintelligence officer. Here is a quote. The Financial Times investigation revealed that the Iranian delegation visited Russian scientific institutes that produce dual-use technologies, components with civilian applications, but which, according to experts, are related to nuclear weapons research. The investigation is based on letters, travel documents, and records from Iranian and Russian corporations, as well as interviews with Western officials and non-proliferation experts. And now it has become known that Iran requested isotope 3T from Russia. This is a material that can be used to increase the power of nuclear warheads and is strictly controlled by international non-proliferation regulations. At the same time, Western intelligence agencies noticed that Iranians were actively trying to purchase nuclear technologies on the foreign market, including this isotope 3T. Before Israel and the United States struck Iranian nuclear facilities, Iran warned that it had taken steps that would make it easier to build a bomb. In May, the United States imposed new sanctions against the very same Iranian Organization of Defense Innovation and Research, warning that this organization is engaged in dual-use scientific research and development applicable to nuclear weapons and nuclear weapons delivery systems. Iran, of course, consistently. Iran, on the other hand, denies ever seeking to develop nuclear weapons, citing a religious fatwa by Khamenei that prohibits their use. Meanwhile, Russia's position has always supposedly been that it opposes Iran's nuclear program. But in reality, things turned out completely different. Non-proliferation experts contacted by the Financial Times claimed that the delegates' biographies, the types of Russian companies they met with, and the tricks used during their trips to Moscow are, at the very least, suspicious. And so, according to correspondence reviewed by the Financial Times at the beginning of 2024, Kalvand, the main delegate, received a request from the Iranian Ministry of Defense to use his small company called Damavand Tech to organize a trip for a secret delegation to Moscow. But all of this was to be covered up as if Damavand Tech was just a consulting company and its employees were simply flying to Moscow almost like tourists. Interestingly, by May 2024, Kalvand, who is fluent in Russian and, by the way, holds a degree in nuclear physics from the Kiev Polytechnic Institute, received a letter at his consulting firm from a 78-year-old Russian scientist named Oleg Maslenikov. In the letter, Kalvand and 4 specified individuals were invited to pay an official visit to one of Maslenikov's companies in Moscow. However, as you can imagine, this delegation did not consist of ordinary scientists. All of them were connected to the Organization of Defensive Innovations and Research of Iran. Tehran claims that this organization is, quote, engaged in the production, supply, and support of products in the field of modern defense, but does not mention any involvement in nuclear research. The United States government has repeatedly imposed sanctions against this organization and related entities over the past decades, for work on nuclear, chemical, and biological weapons, as well as for significant assistance in the proliferation of weapons of mass destruction or their delivery systems. In 2024, the Iranian parliament officially recognized this organization for the first time, transferring it under the control of the Ministry of Defense and ultimately under the personal authority of Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. Interestingly, since then, the funding for this organization has been classified. And this August trip of Kalvand and his delegation was carefully planned. All the delegates' documents were fake, of course, and so the first of these passports was issued in the name of 48-year-old Javad Ghasemi, who previously held the position of General Director at Paradise Medical Pioneers. This is a company that the United States sanctioned in 2019 for, attention, being a front for nuclear weapons procurement. Currently, Ghasemi is also the General Director. Ayman Gastar Roman Kish is an Iranian company that supplies equipment for nuclear safety and radiation testing, and which is directly connected to the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. These are Iran's elite military forces. One of the other diplomatic passports was issued in the name of Ruhollah Azimirad, who is a nuclear scientist working for the Iranian Ministry of Defense. He is an expert in the field of radiation testing and transportation. The most important delegate could have been the nuclear scientist Sarush Makhtashami, who works at the Amir Kabir University of Technology in Iran. He is an expert on neutron generators, which can be used in plants as components that contribute to the detonation of certain types of nuclear weapons. The last member of the delegation was a 35-year-old man named Amir Yazdian, who, unlike the others, had no academic background and does not appear in any of Iran's corporate records. But it is known that he works for the counterintelligence of the Islamic Republic. And what's interesting here is that the wife of this main delegate, Laleh Heshmati, runs the MKR company. This company is under United States sanctions for covertly acquiring technology for Iran's ballistic missile program. And during their visit to Russia, the Iranian delegation visited the Maslenikov Techno-Expert Enterprise as well as the Thorium Research Center, which is located just a few minutes' walk from the Research Institute building. Polius, this very Polius. This is a subsidiary of Kazakhstan, which is under sanctions, and the state conglomerate Rostec, which came under United States sanctions back in the late 1990s for allegedly supplying missile technologies to Iran. Another company of this Maslenikov, which was visited by Iranians, is a direct supplier to the 18th Central Research Institute of the Russian Ministry of Defense. Organizations controlled by the main intelligence directorate. Well, and as experts say, the Iranians were unlikely to visit Russian facilities without the approval of the Federal Security Service and therefore the Kremlin. But most importantly, the research institutes that the Iranians visited specialize in so-called dual-use technologies, components that have a legitimate civilian purpose under the law, but which can also contribute to the development of nuclear weapons. According to the United States, as well as public statements by the intelligence services of Germany, the Netherlands, and Sweden, Iran has been secretly trying to acquire such technologies for more than 10 years, bypassing Western export restrictions. And now former intelligence officers have reported that the organization regularly uses deliberately ambiguous language and vague project descriptions to maintain plausible deniability of its involvement in Iran's nuclear program. According to Western intelligence agencies, the Iranian delegation showed particular interest in powerful X-ray tubes for pulsed X-ray imaging, and it is precisely such systems that are used for diagnostic testing of the implosion mechanism of nuclear weapons. Tori is one of the Russian companies visited by the delegation. It produces both pulsed and continuous klystrons, as well as electron accelerators. Tori's electron accelerators are very similar to those used in nuclear weapons testing. In addition to this, the delegation from Iran wanted to obtain 3 radioactive isotopes: tritium, strontium-90, and nickel-63. The export of each of these isotopes is strictly 100% controlled. And for example, tritium in large quantities is a key component for creating a modern nuclear warhead, as it allows for a significant increase in the explosive power of the device. So there are a lot of questions here about why exactly the Iranian delegation actually went to Moscow a year ago, what they received, what they brought back, and to what extent. The American strike on Iran's nuclear facilities in June really, if not destroyed, then definitely set back the Iranian nuclear program by years ago. I'll leave it at that. Share your opinions and conclusions in the comments below this episode. Subscribe to the channel, hit the bell, and don't forget to like. That's all for now. Take care. Goodbye, everyone.